Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the Robert Walters BI and Data webinar sessions. Today, joined by Jo Mahoney, our Slalom consultant, and she'll be discussing how to create a modern data culture, essentially. If we just have the next slides, Jo, I'll just do a bit of a shameless plug about myself for those of you who don't already know me. My name's Chris Ingman. I'm a senior recruitment consultant over at Robert Walters, specialising within business intelligence, data and analytics. I'm also the co-organiser of the Manchester Power BI user group, which is still going strong, albeit remotely. And I also founded the Leeds Power BI user group, which admittedly not going as strong, seeing as there's no point having two. I think the first session we did of the Leeds Power BI user group was in Feb, and then COVID happened. So we will look to restart it again at some point, but at the moment we're just doing the Manchester Power BI user group. But that's still monthly. The last one we had was about 2 weeks ago, so look out for that. If anyone wants a bit more info, just give me a quick shout. And I've just had the next slide, Jo. So here are the typical roles I tend to recruit for. So whether they be heads of BI, data engineer roles, data analyst roles, BI developers, more than happy to help. So if you're in a position where you're looking for a new role, just feel free to give me a quick shout. More than happy to give you a bit of information about the roles we're working on, and also a bit of information about the market. Alternatively, if you're looking to recruit in your team, looking to expand, and again, feel free to get in touch. I'll give you a bit of information about the market trends, candidates available, average salaries, etc. My details at the bottom of this slide again, so just drop me a call or an email, whatever's easiest. And just next slide, Jo. So just on the point of salaries. So this is our Robert Walters salary survey. A few of you might have already seen it before, but essentially it's an amalgamation of all the average salaries for roles across different sectors. So whether it be tech, supply chain, HR. There's a lot of information there. So if you're looking at a benchmark in your team or just want to make sure you're getting paid the right amount, it's quite interesting. So just follow the link. It's free to view. And just final slide, Jo, but that's it from me really. So we'll make a start. So what I'll ask if everyone can just turn their mics off and the video, just makes everything run a bit smoother. I'll be manning the chat box, so any questions you have, just feel free to put them there. Also, if you do me a favour and try and write the question out just so I can understand it, because I need to read it back to Jo and it's sometimes a bit tricky. Like I say, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end, so I'll make a note of everyone who asks questions. And that's it from me. So over to Jo.
Fab, thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. I hope that everyone's doing well. It's Friday afternoon. I know that the 4-day weeks are always tough, but we're nearly there. So my name's Jo Mahoney.
Hey.
I'm a principal. Oh, I think someone's still off mute. I'm a principal consultant at Slalom, and I sit within our data analytics practice in Manchester. So I'm going to be talking through our point of view around creating a modern culture of data today. And we say modern culture of data because we have the internet, we have our smartphones, everything's in the cloud. And with that comes this huge amount of data available and a lot of data-driven decision making, especially in our personal lives, which I wanted to just talk through a couple of examples of now. So, as you can see, there's a few familiar screens, I'm sure. So over the bank holiday, we had plans to go for a walk and a picnic. So beforehand, actually all week, I was pretty much checking the weather app to make sure that we could actually go. And it was pretty crazy, the weather app for last week, when there was days where it was 21 degrees and glorious sunshine, and then later on in the week like -2 and snowing. So yeah, I was definitely checking that to make sure we had the emergency layers in the bag, and using that to decide sort of like what to pack and whether we could actually go. I then used the Google Maps to see how far away the destination was, and it meant that I could work out what time we needed to leave so I could get there and have a little bit of a walk before I definitely need to sit down and have some lunch. And then also when I was walking around, my smartwatch was tracking all my steps and how far I was walking and the calories and stuff, and they're giving me like real-time updates, so I could decide how many sausage rolls I could eat once we'd sat down. So it is really involved in our personal lives, as you can kind of see with it at the touch of a button, but a lot of the time we find that that doesn't translate to clients in the professional workspace. So a lot of that is still based on, a lot of decision making still based on sort of gut feel, or just sort of carrying on without trying to actually like investigate anything with the data first. So that's why we think creating a modern culture of data is so important. So I wanted to break down what we mean by a modern culture of data in a little bit more detail. So what we think of it is a mindset and a belief that making data-driven decisions is going to be better than making just gut feel decisions. And we believe that if you've got accessible and trusted and secure data, that you can unlock a lot more value of your people, and they can seemingly unlock a lot more value for your business. And ultimately, it's when people at every level of the organization is aligned to that and does make data to use, does use the data they have available to make the decision, and they understand how important that is for your organization. So if you think about like a shop, the cashiers, even the people sat there creating the data, they are understanding how important that is as it's being input because of how your business needs to use that. And that should go all the way up to the C-suite with at each level, people using data or being clear on how it should be looked after and stored and used as much as possible to try and get as much value out of it as you can. So we have a bit of a quote from some Forrester research in 2018, which suggested that insights-driven businesses growing of an average more than 30% each year, and by 2021, this year, they are predicted to earn 1.8 trillion annually. So we're seeing this sort of pull away of organizations that are making the most out of their data, and also the ones that aren't kind of struggling to keep up. So we hear a lot of chief data officers and other people that are high up in organization that are saying like they're investing all this time and effort in the infrastructure and the data itself, trying to cleanse it in data pipelines and in moving to the cloud, and they're having all these different ways of collecting data now around customers and products, but they're still kind of struggling to convert that into business improvements. And we think that is where they haven't quite got all of the components to this modern culture of data sort of established. So we think that modern culture of data is enabled by these 5 key elements on the diagram, and they all impact each other. And if you lose sight of one of them, then it makes being successful in the other elements much more challenging. So if I start with the bold vision right in the middle, this is around why an organization's why, and it's not around the technology why, even though we're talking about data. It's around why does the business exist in the first place? What are you trying to do as a business? And then you can think about the technology that needs to enable that and make sure you can do it faster or more efficiently, your why, and make sure that they're really aligned. So that's really important as a starting position. Round the edge, we have access and transparency, and that's kind of the thing that we always jump to when we're thinking about enabling data. It's the infrastructure, it's the data itself, how it's sort of cleansed, the ETL, software available, and that's really important to give the people in the organization the tools that they need, and actually like putting the data in their hands. And we still see a lot of organizations struggling to do this, especially they might have specific hubs where there's access to data, but it's generally difficult for them to, or they're kind of a bit behind in dispersing that as widely as it needs to be. On the opposite side, we have guardianship, and this is a broader version of governance. It is about making sure that the tools, the data, the systems, and the practices in place are trusted, not just compliant and legal. And it's about people further away from the data, if they're relying on other people's work, whether that's trusted. Do they believe that the data itself is trusted, how it's being stored, like further down the line, and also like if it's then in reporting, are my people using this in the right way? And then it also goes into some ethics as well. So thinking as we move along this curve of analytics maturity, am I doing things in an ethical way? And would my customers be happy with me using their data in this way, for example? At the bottom, we have data literacy, and this is a real key people component. So it's about having a skill set and a mindset. So we see a lot of gaps in this space, and we want the top down of people to understand why the data is important and how it drives the business. And like I was saying just before, what is their role in the creation, storage, analysis, and decision making of the data. And then the thing that sort of wraps it all together is the ways of working, and it's about bringing those, changing it up from the way it's done so that data-driven decision making is at the heart of everything. So we think that a successful shift into improving those 5 elements can cause some of these great benefits. So, and it really depends in what your organization's why is around, like how you'd set this up and what you'd sort of go for. So what is your why? Why does it matter to you? For example, is it because you want to disrupt the market, or you want to compete in a market that is being disrupted? Or is it because you want to create the most incredible experience for your customers, or discover something new? So whichever the sort of big driving forces for your organization, we think this framework can apply and be a real accelerator. So I wanted to jump into a bit of a client example. So I'm sure everyone recognizes the Uber app, and this is obviously a huge disruptor for a few different industries now, and this company is obviously really built from the ground up around data. So very, very difficult for organizations that aren't using data to compete with. We think about the taxi companies, actually now the food industry, they're a bit of a force. So so that's some of the main sort of markets they've disrupted, but also the rental car company. So a company like AVIS, back a few years ago, would find that people would travel to another country or a different city, and they'd decide to rent a car. And that was sort of the done thing. but now that Uber is available so widely, it's not really the case anymore, and people aren't renting cars in the same way. So it is a big disruption actually to a bit of a different market that's a bit unexpected. So AVIS had a bold vision, and it was around taking connected car data to create a connected car experience that's excellent and become a mobility company of the future. So just not a rental company, but their vision was about mobility more widely. And there was innovation and that customer experience, as well as business efficiencies, at the heart of like why they wanted to do this. So Slalom worked with AVIS on a proof of technology concept to see how they could use cloud to really move them towards their vision. They did a lot of experimentation with various use cases, and they recognized this $40 million opportunity around efficiency gains. And it seemed pretty straightforward actually to deliver this. And that was around trying to optimize their fleet of vehicles. So similarly to when you rent a vehicle, you're personally have a big proportion of their fleet, which is 650,000 vehicles that they lease. So if their own vehicles are being driven a lot and their mileage is ticking up over this set threshold, then they too have to pay the sort of fine, and I personally know how expensive that can be. So timesing that by 650,000 is a big number. So the opportunity that they recognized was around how could they optimize their fleet so that each of the vehicles would stay within the optimal level, and that is the below the line position. So you can see on the y-axis we have essentially the mileage reading, and then on the x-axis we've got the vehicle age, and really to optimize that we need to keep all of these vehicles that have gone above the line back until they get a little bit older, and basically keep everything below that line. You can see some of the vehicles further right at the bottom. It looks like they've not been used in sort of years. So these are the kind of vehicles that maybe we could get out a little bit more. Maybe they're at like completely at the back of the parked behind about 50 different cars or something, I'm not sure. So really we wanted to be able to optimize this so that we're making the best out of our entire fleet, and we're not just using the same cars so much that they're then costing us a fortune. So because that sort of decision making is done by the people on the floor, like prepping the cars for the rentals, we needed to be able to put this sort of insight into their hands. So basically, the process that happens is the rental car gets dropped off quite simply, and then it goes through various stations to be cleaned and prepared for the next rental. And then the next rental sort of happens and picks it up. So you can imagine, like, if something's been dropped off and then it's sort of like parked in the line again after it's been cleaned, then it's pretty easy to see how some of these vehicles are getting used so heavily, and some just aren't because they're not being returned ready to go out again. So there's a bit of a queue. So what we did was create a machine learning algorithm that looked at the mileage on each of the cars, but it also looked at other factors, like if customers are coming in soon, that often get upgraded, or lots of other factors like that would kind of take everything into account, all of the influences, and be able to optimize on a per car level, whether it should be priority to go out or whether it should be actually held back and another car be chosen instead. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of complexity that went into this, which the people on the floor probably didn't have time to spend deciphering. So this color key sort of visualization was developed to help with the output. So as soon as the car went through the prepping and was ready to be put in the lineup again, it would, in the hands of the people prepping the cars and mobile devices, they could see which zone they should park it in. And then the concept being blue cars are ready to go out. They're the ones with the lower mileage and a bit of headspace to be used. And then the red cars, they actually need to be held back. They might be over the line or getting really close to it. So that's in essence a modern culture in action. Like, you're taking that data and you're empowering the people that can actually make the change, and it's going to come with some huge benefits to the business in those savings. So this is just a little bit of a wrap up around the different elements. So we had that bold vision around connecting the cars, the access and transparency. We used an AWS platform and the machine learning algorithm to optimize it. The guardianship, we needed to make sure that the data was reliable, that actually the people that were just looking at their mobile device could simply drive the car where it said, and they knew that that was going to be the optimal thing to do. And data literacy, being able to empower those people to accept and interpret something quite complex into making a change in the actual business. And then the ways of working, ML being a new way of working for them, much more experimental with this new approach to trying things out and various different things, and then stumbling on something that's actually got some real huge business value, and being comfortable with that experimental culture. So what we sort of do with clients initially often is take the approach of looking at the current state across each of these areas. So we'll look at the maturity level across bold vision, access and transparency, guardianship, data literacy, and ways of working. And then once we've done this a few times at various different clients, so we've been able to sort of extrapolate the results to see what the kind of net effect is, net effect is, and see how the benchmark fares across industries and locations. So with each of the areas, we are looking to see where they are on the scale between uncharted and embedded. So it's essentially that the aim should be that each of your elements should be moving towards embedded, and depending on where you are on the scale, there's different steps that can be taken to help shift you along the curve, and that benchmarking and baselining proposition is really useful to see where you've got some gaps. And just a couple of insights from the benchmarking piece, that we found that companies that were further along that maturity curve, they were using data for more people-focused decisions, for example, for customers and employees. And then some of the less mature companies were going for more like money savings or time savings. And then sort of separately, financial investment. The less advanced orgs were relying on literacy. We're focused on literacy and sort of closing those gaps, whereas more advanced orgs were really investing in processes. And so I just wanted to show you a little bit about sort of like what sits under each of these areas of the framework to show how we get to that baseline. And it basically comes from self-assessing with various different people in your organization against some foundations by asking questions that help us assess the maturity. So for bold vision, we're looking for it to be unified across the organization, shared by both the business and technology, measurable with quantifiable business value, and have leadership sponsorship. Access and transparency. We want to ask questions such as, do we have the architecture and infrastructure in place that allows everyone to access the data that they need? That kind of thing. Guardianship. Increasingly important point under guardianship is around that ethical use of data and around like how would our customers feel about us doing this. So that's a real key one that we see becoming more important in more mature organizations. Data literacy. What levels of data literacy do we have across different roles? Do we have embedded data decision making, and how do we better enable our employees to understand when and how to utilize the data? That kind of stuff. And finally, the ways of working. Do we have the operating model and org structure that's going to support us? Do we have any gaps? Are we incentivizing the right behaviours to achieve our strategy and bold vision? And is analytics actually embedded in our everyday day-to-day operations rather than just being in our data analytics team? So we found with several clients that having this clear baseline view across the components makes it easy for them to see where they need to focus for projects, and it's not just on necessarily those typical infrastructure pieces, they're just part of the puzzle, and that's really to transition from siloed to collaborative, intuitive to data-driven, risk-averse to experimental. So it's a really big shift from an old way of doing things to a new way of doing things, and it's a shift to sort of making decisions data-driven and to change the day-to-day for people. So it is a big shift, and obviously with the 5 components, there's a lot to it, but we find when you start making some good progress along these, then they're the organizations that are getting some huge successes from it too. So that is everything that I wanted to cover in the presentation sort of side of things, but I wanted to just say before I open it up to questions, if you are interested in talking more about MCOD, modern culture of data, or understanding the maturity within your organization, then do get in touch. I've just put my email at the bottom, and we have another Slalom event coming up in May, which is also related to MCOD, so look out for that. It's called Moonshot Revisited. And then I am happy to open it up for questions if you wanted to, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Jo. We've got quite a few, to be fair, all from the same person, all from Bilash. So we'll go through. Obviously, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll run through them. But first and foremost, Bilash Dash, he asks, in your opinion, who should drive the data culture within an organisation?
I think it's really got to be driven widely. So at every level, there has to be incentives and the structure and tools in place for people to take personal responsibility for driving that and understanding what, like it was kind of saying before, what your role is in that, and each person needs to be on board with sort of driving towards that data culture, because it's those kind of like micro changes that actually create a change in culture, rather than there just being like a couple of people that are maybe higher up in the organization trying to push it.
Great, thanks. And next from Bill Ash again. So he asks, how do you ensure the data culture can coexist with existing organization cultures?
I think that that it kind of comes to that alignment. So yes, it's ultimately got to be driving towards your organization's bold vision, right? And this is what the this culture of data supports. So as long as there are also your other cultures are driving towards your organization's bold vision, then I don't see why there should be any sort of conflict in that. It would probably be if the culture wasn't driving towards the same goals, that there may be a little bit more friction between cultures, and then we'd sort of think that maybe it's like this reluctance to change, or being, or sort of taking people on the journey towards becoming more data focused and having this culture of data widely in your organization, that the effort needs to be focused on to really sort of drive towards the ultimate organization strategy.
Great, thanks. Next we have Katie Gubar. She asked, well, she just mentioned that she's interested to know a bit more about the work you do with skills providers to leave a lasting capability.
Yeah, so I am within the data analytics capability, but we have a big team of experts in organization models, and sort of part of the team there is much more sort of focused on coming in and assessing the roles and skills that you are required to basically deliver your business goal and support your technology strategies. So they would be best to speak to about exactly how they sort of see that fit, but definitely drop me a note and I can put you in touch with some good people to fill you in with a bit more detail.
Great, thanks. Next we have Gary Moore. He asks, what's your advice on starting to implement data governance?
I think advice is around making it appropriate for your organization. I mean, there is a lot that can be done in the way of governance, and I think getting a balance right around making sure that you are working in the right way, and your tools and data is trusted, and all of those sort of considerations. But at the end of the day, you need to remember that it's also business, and so there has to be a balance struck where you can still achieve your why and not just be sort of governed to death almost. I think that's where we've seen a lot of sort of tensions within organizations before, but once the levels struck well, it can be really beneficial governance, really keep the organization moving forward. So it's a really important one. Good question.
Great, and just finally, probably a good one to wrap it up with, actually, seeing as the pub's open on Monday. Hamad Sumro, he asks, how do you see all this in a post-pandemic world?
I think that the pandemic has probably even more sort of enabled these data-driven companies that are able to react quickly, and also really encouraged sort of less data sort of activated firms to become a bit more agile and think in a bit of a different way and think about what their access and transparency sort of like. So I think I'd like to hope in a post-pandemic world that that would continue to increase with sort of how the markets are being disrupted. It's definitely going to need to. And I'd like to think that, as with innovations, these elements will only become more important. There's data is just more than we've ever had today, so it is really only going to becoming more important as time goes on, and getting some of that value out of it is really going to be the game changer for successful organizations.
Thanks, Joe. We've got a few more coming through. What I'd say, we'll probably leave it there for now, because any questions you have, feel free to just to pass on to Joe directly. But first and foremost, I just want to say thanks for today's session. I thought it was really interesting. I'm sure a lot of people did as well. I've got a few good comments already from people. So yeah, so I really appreciate you joining, Joe. Thanks a lot. And yeah, like I say, obviously just wrap up now. So I appreciate everyone attending this this recording. I will be posting the recording on LinkedIn after, and on our YouTube channel if no one's seen it before. So feel free to catch up with there. Just at the next slide, I'll just finish off with my detailed as well. So obviously, if anyone wants to anyone looking for a new role, or alternatively looking to grow your team out, feel free to drop me a call. Alternatively, if anyone wants to get involved with the webinars, maybe hold a session or do a talk, or have any suggestions about what you'd like to see next, feel free to just drop me a quick shout, and we'll go from there. But thanks for attending, everyone, and have a good weekend.
Thanks very much.